They said I'd never amount to anything, so I hired my brother as my janitor. My name is Sarah Martinez, and I'm 32 years old. The day I handed my brother Marcus his janitor uniform and building keys was the sweetest moment of vindication I've ever experienced. Standing in my corner office on the 47th floor of downtown Phoenix, watching him reluctantly accept a job cleaning the very building where I now run a multi-million-dollar tech consulting firm, I couldn't help but remember his exact words from 15 years ago. "Face it, Sarah, you're not smart enough for business. You should stick to something simple, like cleaning houses or working retail. Leave the real careers to people who actually have brains." Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed. Because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. The irony wasn't lost on me that Marcus, who once mocked my intelligence and ambitions, was now literally cleaning up after the success he said I'd never achieve. But to understand how we got here, I need to take you back to where it all began, in a cramped duplex in East Phoenix where dreams were considered luxuries we couldn't afford. Growing up in the Martinez household meant understanding your place in the family hierarchy from an early age. Our father, Roberto Martinez, worked double shifts at an auto parts warehouse, his hands permanently stained with grease and his back constantly aching from lifting heavy boxes. He was a good man who provided for us the best he could, but his own limited education made him skeptical of aspirations beyond what he considered practical. Our mother, Carmen, cleaned offices downtown during the night shift, leaving before we woke up and returning exhausted as we headed to school. She spoke primarily Spanish at home and struggled with English, making parent-teacher conferences awkward affairs where she nodded politely without fully understanding what was being discussed. Marcus, 3 years older than me, had claimed the role of family success story early on. At 18, when I was just 15, he landed a job at a local electronics store and moved into the apartment above our garage, treating it like his own personal kingdom. He drove a used BMW that he financed at an astronomical interest rate, wore expensive clothes he couldn't really afford, and spoke about his retail management aspirations as if he were destined to run Fortune 500 companies. Marcus had a way of making his $12 an hour job sound like he was a corporate executive, and our parents bought into his narrative completely. I, on the other hand, was the family disappointment disguised as the good daughter. While Marcus charmed everyone with his confident personality and expensive appearance, I spent my time buried in library books, maintaining a 4.0 GPA, and working part-time at a local coffee shop to save money for college. But academic achievement meant little in a household where practical earning potential was valued above all else. When I excitedly showed my parents my acceptance letter to Arizona State University with a partial academic scholarship, their reaction was lukewarm at best. "College is expensive, Mija," my father said, barely glancing at the letter. "And what will you study? Teaching? Social work? Those jobs don't pay enough to justify the debt." My mother nodded in agreement, adding, "Your cousin Elena went to community college for 2 years, and now she's a dental assistant. Good steady work, good benefits. Maybe you should consider something like that instead." Marcus overheard the conversation from the kitchen and laughed loudly. "Sarah thinks she's going to be some big-shot businesswoman," he called out mockingly. "She's been reading too many magazines about female CEOs. Reality check, little sister. You're not cut out for that world. Those people come from money, they have connections, they went to fancy schools. We're from East Phoenix. Know your place." His words stung because they echoed my own secret fears. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel, it means a lot to us. Now, back to the story. I had dreams of starting my own business, of creating something meaningful, of proving that intelligence and determination could overcome circumstances. But I was also aware of our family's financial limitations, my parents' skepticism about higher education, and the overwhelming odds against someone like me succeeding in the competitive world of business. The coffee shop where I worked became my sanctuary during those high school years. Grind Coffee House was owned by Helen Chen, a woman in her 50s who had immigrated from Taiwan and built her business from nothing. She noticed my work ethic immediately, promoting me from barista to shift supervisor within 6 months. More importantly, she saw potential in me that my own family couldn't recognize. You have good business instincts, Helen told me one afternoon, as I was reconciling the daily receipts with unusual accuracy for a 16-year-old. The way you notice patterns in customer preferences, how you've improved our inventory system, your ideas for increasing afternoon sales. These are valuable skills. She paused, studying my face carefully. What do you want to do after high school? I confided in Helen about my college acceptance and my family's reservations. She listened without judgment, then shared her own story of coming to America with limited English and even more limited resources, building her coffee business through sheer determination and strategic thinking. Your family wants security for you, she said. But sometimes, security means taking calculated risks to create better opportunities. Helen became my first real mentor, teaching me practical business lessons that no classroom could provide. She showed me how to read profit and loss statements, explained the importance of customer retention versus acquisition costs, and demonstrated how small operational improvements could significantly impact the bottom line. Under her guidance, I started noticing inefficiencies in businesses everywhere, developing ideas for improvements that most people overlooked. At home, however, my business conversations fell on deaf ears. Marcus had been promoted to assistant manager at his electronics store and used every family dinner to lecture me about real-world experience versus theoretical college nonsense. He seemed personally invested in convincing me that my ambitions were unrealistic. "You know what your problem is, Sarah?" he said during one particularly memorable dinner conversation. "You think you're smarter than everyone else. But book smarts don't mean anything in business. It's about charisma, about being able to connect with people, about understanding how the world really works. You're too shy, too serious, too focused on details that don't matter. Successful business people are natural leaders, not quiet bookworms who hide behind coffee machines." My father nodded thoughtfully at Marcus's assessment. "Your brother makes good points, Misha. Maybe you should reconsider your plans. There's nothing wrong with having more realistic goals." The constant undermining was wearing me down, making me question my own judgment and abilities. I started having nightmares about failing in college, about proving my family right, about ending up trapped in a dead-end job while Marcus continued to be held up as the successful one. The pressure to conform to their limited expectations grew stronger as my high school graduation approached. Everything changed the night I overheard Marcus talking to his girlfriend on the phone in our backyard. I had gone outside to water my mother's small vegetable garden when I heard him laughing loudly near the garage apartment. "No, she's definitely not going to make it in business," he was saying. "Sarah's too soft, too naive. She thinks if you work hard and get good grades, success just falls into your lap. She has no idea how competitive the real world is, how ruthless you have to be. Honestly, I'm doing her a favor by talking her out of it now before she wastes years of her life and our parents' money on some fantasy." He paused, listening to his girlfriend's response, then continued with even more conviction. "Trust me, in 5 years she'll be working some basic office job, maybe married to some average guy, wondering why she ever thought she was special. Meanwhile, I'll be running my own electronics franchise. It's just the natural order of things. Some people are born to lead, others are born to follow." Sarah's definitely a follower. Standing in the darkness, holding a watering can with shaking hands, I felt something fundamental shift inside me. The casual cruelty in his voice, the absolute certainty that I was destined to fail, the dismissive way he reduced my dreams to mere delusions. It was all too much. But instead of crushing my spirit, his words ignited something fierce and determined within me. I realized that Marcus wasn't trying to protect me from disappointment or help me make realistic choices. He was actively sabotaging my confidence because my success would threaten his position as the family's golden child. He needed me to fail to validate his own mediocrity. And our parents, in their well-meaning but misguided way, were enabling his undermining because it felt safer to support conventional paths than to encourage ambitious dreams. That night, I made a decision that would change the trajectory of my entire life. I would go to college despite their disapproval. I would study business despite their skepticism. I would build something significant despite their predictions of failure. And someday, When I had achieved the success they claimed was impossible, I would remember every dismissive comment, every discouraging word, every moment they chose to believe in Marcus's limited vision instead of my unlimited potential. I started planning my escape from their narrative of limitation. Helen had taught me to think strategically, to break big goals into manageable steps, to focus on what I could control rather than what I couldn't. I couldn't control my family's lack of support, but I could control my own preparation and determination. First, I researched every scholarship, grant, and financial aid opportunity available to me. I spent hours in the school counseling office with Mrs. Rodriguez, who helped me navigate the complex world of college funding. Together, we discovered that my grades and test scores qualified me for additional academic scholarships I hadn't known existed. Combined with financial aid based on my family's income level, I could cover most of my college expenses without burdening my parents financially. Next, I increased my hours at Grind Coffee House and started saving every possible penny. I bought my clothes at thrift stores, packed my lunch every day, and found free entertainment options instead of spending money on movies or shopping trips like my classmates. Helen noticed my intensified focus and offered me additional responsibilities that came with small pay increases. She also introduced me to some of her business contacts, professionals who could provide guidance as I navigated toward college and beyond. Most importantly, I stopped seeking my family's approval or validation. Their lack of support had hurt deeply, but I realized that waiting for them to believe in my dreams was giving them power over my future that they hadn't earned. I would prove my worth through action, not through convincing them with words they weren't ready to hear. The months leading up to graduation were tense at home. Marcus sensed my growing independence and seemed threatened by it, intensifying his efforts to undermine my confidence. He criticized everything from my study habits to my work schedule to my choice of friends, always with our parents nodding along as if his opinions carried special weight. "You're making a huge mistake," he told me the night before I submitted my final college enrollment paperwork. "You're going to accumulate massive debt for a degree that won't get you anywhere. Meanwhile, I'm getting promoted to district manager next month. By the time you graduate, I'll be making more money than most college graduates ever see." I looked at my brother, this person who shared my DNA but seemed incapable of imagining any future beyond the narrow confines of his own limited ambitions, and felt nothing but pity. "We'll see," I replied quietly, returning to my paperwork. "Yeah, we will see," he said with a confidence that would later prove to be spectacularly misplaced. "And when you're struggling to find work with your fancy business degree, remember that I tried to warn you." As I signed my name on the enrollment documents that would officially make me an Arizona State University business student, I made a silent promise to myself. Someday Marcus would see exactly what I was capable of achieving. Someday his dismissive predictions would be proven so wrong that he'd have to confront his own role in trying to limit my potential. Someday the natural order he was so confident about would be completely reversed. I had no idea how literally that promise would come true, or how satisfying it would feel when Marcus eventually stood in my office, desperate for employment, willing to accept any position I was willing to offer. But that moment was still years away, waiting at the end of a journey that would test every ounce of determination, intelligence, and resilience I possessed. The girl who graduated high school that spring was different from the one who had started senior year. I had learned to trust my own judgment over others' expectations, to value my own dreams over their limitations, to find strength in their skepticism rather than defeat. I was ready to begin the real work of proving them wrong, one strategic decision at a time. My freshman year at Arizona State University was a baptism by fire that taught me more about resilience than any textbook ever could. Moving into the dorms with a single suitcase and $347 in my checking account, I was surrounded by classmates who casually mentioned their parents' professions as doctors, lawyers, and executives. They drove cars that cost more than my family's annual income and spoke about spring break trips to Europe as if they were weekend getaways to the local mall. The business program at ASU was notoriously competitive, designed to weed out students who weren't serious about their commitment to success. Professor Margaret Williams, who taught our introductory business fundamentals course, made it clear from day one that academic excellence was merely the entry fee. "Half of you won't make it through this program," she announced during our first lecture. Not because you're not smart enough, but because you're not hungry enough. Business requires a level of dedication that most people aren't willing to sustain. I thrived in that environment precisely because I had something to prove that went beyond personal ambition. Every challenging assignment, every late night in the library, every moment when I felt overwhelmed by the complexity of financial modeling or market analysis, became an opportunity to prove Marcus wrong. While my classmates complained about the workload, I welcomed it as training for the real-world battles I knew awaited me. My work-study job in the university's Small Business Development Center exposed me to entrepreneurs who were building companies from nothing. Dr. James Patterson, the center's director, noticed my unusual interest in the practical applications of our academic theories. Most students want to learn about big corporations, he observed during one of our weekly meetings. You're always asking about startups, about how to bootstrap a business with limited capital. That's unusual for someone your age. I explained my background and my goals, carefully omitting the family dynamics that had shaped my determination. Dr. Patterson became my second mentor, introducing me to local business owners who were willing to share their experiences with ambitious students. Through these connections, I learned that success in business was less about having perfect conditions and more about maximizing whatever resources were available. One of these entrepreneurs was Linda Rodriguez, who had built a regional catering company from a single food truck. During our coffee meeting, she shared advice that would guide my thinking for years to come. People assume you need massive capital to start a business, Linda said, but what you really need is the ability to solve problems better than anyone else. Find a problem that frustrates people, figure out a solution that's 10 times better than what exists, and the money will follow. Linda's words resonated deeply because they aligned with observations I'd been making since high school. At Grind Coffee House, I'd noticed that Helen's success came from her attention to details that other coffee shops ignored. She knew every regular customer's order by heart, adjusted her inventory based on weather patterns, and created an atmosphere that made people want to linger and return. These weren't revolutionary innovations, but they were consistent improvements that created loyal customers and steady profits. Back in Phoenix during winter break, the contrast between my expanding worldview and my family's static expectations became painfully obvious. Marcus had been promoted to assistant district manager, a title that came with a modest salary increase and significantly more responsibility for the same electronics chain. He spent the entire holiday break talking about his management philosophy and his plans to eventually open his own franchise location. College is fine for people who want to work for other people, he told our assembled extended family during Christmas dinner. But real entrepreneurs learn by doing, not by sitting in classrooms studying theory. I'm building actual business experience while Sarah is just accumulating debt and ideas that won't work in the real world. My cousin Anna, who had recently graduated from community college with a nursing degree, nodded approvingly. Marcus always was the smart one about practical things. Sarah, when are you going to pick a major that leads to an actual job? Business is so vague. What would you even do with that degree? I tried to explain my interest in entrepreneurship, my growing understanding of market dynamics, the companies I'd been studying through my internship program. But my words seemed to bounce off their preconceptions without making any impact. They had already decided that Marcus represented success, and I represented expensive education without clear purpose. My father, who had been quietly listening to the conversation, finally spoke up. Mija, your brother makes good points. This business school, it's costing a lot of money. Maybe you should think about switching to something more practical. Teaching, maybe. Teachers have good benefits, steady work. The suggestion felt like a betrayal, not because teaching wasn't a noble profession, but because it represented their inability to imagine me succeeding at anything more ambitious. They could envision me in a service role, helping others achieve their goals, but not as someone who might build something significant of my own. That night, alone in my childhood bedroom that now felt foreign and small, I called Helen from Grind Coffee House. Even though it was late, she answered immediately and listened as I described the frustration of trying to communicate my vision to people who couldn't see beyond their own limited experiences. Sarah, Helen said gently, you're trying to convince people who benefit from your self-doubt. Marcus gets to feel superior when you question yourself. Your parents get to feel protective when they discourage your ambitions. But their emotional needs don't define your potential. Her words hit me like a revelation. I had been seeking validation from people who were emotionally invested in maintaining the status quo. Marcus needed me to fail to prove his path was superior. My parents needed my goals to be modest, to confirm their belief that big dreams led to big disappointments. I was asking them to celebrate ambitions that threatened their entire worldview. From that moment forward, I stopped trying to convince my family that my dreams were worthwhile. Instead, I channeled my energy into proving it through results. When I returned to ASU for spring semester, I declared my major as entrepreneurship and innovation, despite knowing it would trigger another round of family skepticism. My sophomore year marked a turning point in both my academic performance and my practical business education. Professor David Kim, who taught our entrepreneurship seminar, assigned us to identify a real market opportunity and develop a comprehensive business plan to address it. Most students chose theoretical problems or copied existing business models. I decided to tackle something that had been bothering me since my work-study job began. The university's Small Business Development Center was struggling to connect student volunteers with local entrepreneurs who needed affordable assistance. Dr. Patterson was manually matching students to businesses using a complicated spreadsheet system that wasted time and often resulted in poor fits. Businesses needed specific skills. Students wanted relevant experience, but the current system couldn't efficiently connect supply with demand. I spent weeks researching the problem, interviewing students and business owners, analyzing the costs of professional consulting services that these small businesses couldn't afford. What emerged was a clear picture of inefficiency that could be solved with better technology and systematized processes. My solution was an online platform that would profile students' skills and career interests, catalog local businesses' specific needs, and use algorithm-based matching to create mutually beneficial partnerships. Students would gain real-world experience, businesses would access affordable expertise, and the university would strengthen its community connections. Professor Kim was intrigued enough to introduce me to Rebecca Martinez, no relation despite sharing my last name, who was a successful tech entrepreneur and occasional guest lecturer. Rebecca had sold her first company to a major software firm and was now angel investing in student startups. During our meeting, she reviewed my business plan with the kind of serious attention I'd never received from my family. "This isn't just a good class project," Rebecca said after studying my financial projections and market analysis. "This is a viable business opportunity. Have you considered actually building this platform instead of just writing about it?" The suggestion was both thrilling and terrifying. I had been so focused on academic success that I hadn't seriously considered turning my coursework into a real company. But Rebecca's enthusiasm was infectious, and she offered to provide mentorship if I decided to pursue the venture. That summer, instead of returning home to Phoenix, I remained in Tempe working 3 jobs to save money while developing my platform prototype. I waited tables at a restaurant near campus, tutored struggling business students, and maintained my work-study position at the Small Business Center. The 18-hour days were exhausting, but every dollar I earned brought me closer to independence from my family's financial support and skeptical expectations. Working with a computer science student named David Chen who needed a business partner for his senior project, we built the first version of what would eventually become Connected Solutions. David brought technical expertise while I contributed business strategy and market research. Our partnership was based on complementary skills and shared determination, rather than friendship or family connections. The early version of our platform was rough around the edges, but it successfully matched 12 students with local businesses during our beta testing phase. The feedback was overwhelmingly positive. Students gained valuable experience, businesses solved real problems affordably, and the university expanded its community engagement. More importantly, we proved that the concept could work with proper execution. Dr. Patterson was so impressed with our results that he agreed to pilot the program officially during the fall semester. Rebecca Martinez introduced us to other potential investors and helped us refine our business model. By the end of summer, what had started as a class assignment was becoming a legitimate business opportunity with real revenue potential. When I called home to share the news about our pilot program and preliminary investment interest, the response was predictably mixed. My mother expressed pride that I was working so hard, but worried about the risks of starting a business while still in school. My father questioned whether I was neglecting my studies for side projects that might not lead anywhere. Marcus, however, was openly dismissive. "So you built a website that matches students with unpaid internships," he said during our phone conversation. "That's not a real business, Sarah. That's just a more complicated way of doing what job boards already do. Nobody's going to pay serious money for something that simple." His criticism stung because it contained just enough truth to feed my own insecurities. Our platform was relatively simple compared to major software companies. We were targeting a niche market rather than building something with massive scale potential. Perhaps I was overestimating the commercial viability of what was essentially an academic project. But Rebecca had taught me to distinguish between constructive criticism and undermining negativity. Marcus wasn't offering suggestions for improvement or identifying specific weaknesses that needed addressing. He was simply dismissing the entire concept because acknowledging its potential would require admitting that I might be capable of achieving something significant. Junior year brought validation that silenced most of my remaining self-doubt. Connected Solutions was accepted into ASU's competitive startup incubator program, which provided mentorship, resources, and a small amount of seed funding. David and I were featured in the university newspaper as student entrepreneurs to watch. Local business publications wrote articles about our innovative approach to connecting academic resources with community needs. More importantly, our platform was generating real revenue. Businesses were paying monthly subscription fees to access our student talent pool. The university signed a licensing agreement that provided us with steady income and official institutional support. Rebecca's initial investment was followed by additional funding from other angel investors, who saw the potential for scaling our model to other universities. By spring semester, I was running a profitable business while maintaining a 3.8 GPA in one of the most demanding programs at ASU. The girl who had arrived on campus with $347 was now managing a six-figure business and planning expansion to universities across Arizona. The contrast with Marcus's trajectory during this same period was becoming impossible to ignore. His electronics chain was struggling to compete with online retailers and big-box stores. Several locations had closed, resulting in layoffs and reduced opportunities for advancement. His assistant district manager position was eliminated during corporate restructuring, forcing him to accept a demotion back to store management with a significant salary cut. During my brief visits home, I could see the stress wearing on him. The confident predictions about his business acumen and natural leadership abilities were being contradicted by market forces beyond his control. His expensive lifestyle was becoming harder to maintain on a reduced income. The future that had seemed so certain and promising was revealing itself to be built on unstable foundations. Meanwhile, my parents were slowly beginning to recognize that my college education was producing tangible results beyond just academic achievements. When local newspapers featured stories about Connected Solutions, they proudly shared the articles with neighbors and relatives. When I appeared on a student entrepreneur panel at the university, they attended and listened with growing amazement as I fielded questions about business strategy and market expansion. The shift in their perception was gradual but undeniable. They still didn't fully understand what I was building or how it generated revenue, but they could see that other people were taking my work seriously. Investors were writing checks, universities were signing contracts, media outlets were requesting interviews. These external validations carried weight that my explanations had never achieved. By senior year, the dynamic in our family had fundamentally changed. Marcus was dealing with career setbacks and financial pressures, while I was managing a growing business and planning for post-graduation expansion. The natural order he had been so confident about was already beginning to reverse itself, though none of us yet understood how complete that reversal would eventually become. Looking back, I can see that this period was when I developed the foundational skills and mindset that would carry me through the bigger challenges ahead. I learned to trust my own judgment even when others questioned it. I discovered that solving real problems for real people could be both personally fulfilling and financially rewarding. Most importantly, I proved to myself that coming from a working-class family in East Phoenix didn't disqualify me from building something significant. The girl who had once doubted whether she belonged in business school was becoming a woman who knew she belonged wherever she decided to go. Every small victory was building toward larger ones, Every challenge overcome was strengthening my confidence for bigger tests ahead. I was systematically proving that Marcus's predictions about my limitations were not just wrong, but spectacularly wrong. The foundation I built during those college years would soon support achievements that none of us could have imagined possible. The moment that changed everything happened on a humid Thursday evening in July, 3 months after my graduation from ASU. I was sitting in my cramped studio apartment in Tempe, reviewing financial projections for Connected Solutions expansion into California universities, when my phone rang. The caller ID showed Marcus's number, which surprised me since we rarely spoke unless family occasions required it. "Sarah, I need to talk to you about something important." His voice was strained in a way I'd never heard before. "Can you meet me for coffee tomorrow? There's something I need to ask you, and I'd rather do it in person." The urgency in his tone caught me off guard. Marcus had always approached our rare conversations with a mixture of condescension and disinterest, as if speaking to me was a favor he was reluctantly granting. This was different. He sounded almost vulnerable, which seemed impossible for someone who had spent years positioning himself as the family authority on career success. We met at a chain coffee shop near his apartment, far from the grind coffee house where I had first learned to dream beyond my circumstances. Marcus arrived looking disheveled and tired, wearing clothes that seemed older and less carefully maintained than his usual polished appearance. The expensive watch he had proudly shown off for years was notably absent from his wrist. "I'll get straight to the point," he said after we sat down with our drinks. "The electronics company is filing for bankruptcy. My store is closing next month, along with most of the Arizona locations. I'm being laid off with 2 weeks severance and no real prospects for finding comparable management positions in retail." The news should have shocked me, but I had been following the decline of traditional electronics retailers and trade publications. The writing had been on the wall for companies that failed to adapt to changing consumer preferences and online competition. What surprised me was Marcus's apparent blindness to these industry trends that had been obvious to anyone paying attention. "I'm sorry to hear that," I said, and meant it genuinely. Despite our difficult relationship, I took no pleasure in his professional struggles. "What are your plans for finding new employment?" Marcus shifted uncomfortably in his chair, avoiding eye contact as he continued. "That's actually why I wanted to talk to you. I've been thinking about what you said in college about entrepreneurship and starting your own business. Maybe it's time for me to consider something like that, instead of looking for another management job in a dying industry." The irony was so thick I could practically taste it. The same brother who had mocked my business education as impractical theory was now seeking my advice about entrepreneurship. The person who had confidently predicted my failure in the competitive world of business was admitting that his own career path had led to a dead end. "What kind of business are you thinking about starting?" I asked carefully, curious to see how much his perspective had actually shifted. "Well, that's where I was hoping you could help me out," Marcus said, finally meeting my eyes. "You've got this whole tech thing figured out and you understand how to get funding and all that. I was thinking maybe we could partner on something. Pool our resources and experience." The audacity of his suggestion left me momentarily speechless. Marcus wanted to partner with me on a business venture, presumably as an equal partner, despite having spent years undermining my confidence and dismissing my capabilities. He was essentially asking me to rescue him from the consequences of his own career choices, while offering nothing but his presence in return. "What specific skills or resources would you bring to a partnership?" I asked, keeping my voice neutral despite the emotions churning inside me. Marcus straightened up, slipping back into his familiar role as the family expert on practical matters. "Business experience, obviously. I've been managing people and operations for years. I understand customer service, inventory management, employee relations. You've got the technical and academic side, but you're still pretty new to actually running a business day to day." His response revealed how completely he misunderstood both my current situation and his own value proposition. Connected Solutions had been operating profitably for over a year, with me handling all aspects of business operations, from financial management to strategic planning. Meanwhile, his management experience was entirely within a single failing company in a declining industry. "Marcus," I said slowly, I appreciate you thinking of me, but I'm not looking for a business partner right now. Connected Solutions is doing well on its own, and I'm focused on scaling it to new markets. His face darkened with a familiar expression I remembered from our childhood arguments. Come on, Sarah. You can't seriously think you're ready to handle major business growth by yourself. You need someone with real management experience to help you avoid costly mistakes. There it was again. The automatic assumption that his limited experience was more valuable than my proven results. The reflexive belief that I needed his guidance despite having achieved more business success in 2 years than he had in his entire career. The inability to recognize that his own career trajectory suggested he might not be the expert he imagined himself to be. Actually, I think I'm managing quite well, I replied. We've successfully expanded to 3 universities, our revenue has grown 300% this year, and we just closed a Series A funding round that will support expansion to 15 more schools. Marcus stared at me for a long moment, processing information that clearly contradicted his assumptions about my capabilities and achievements. I could see him struggling to reconcile his mental image of me as his naive little sister with the reality of my business success. How much funding? He asked quietly. $2. $3 million, I answered honestly. The number hung in the air between us, like a challenge to everything Marcus had believed about our relative potential for success. His entire career earnings probably totaled less than half of what investors had just committed to my company's growth. That's impossible, he said flatly. You're 22 years old. Nobody gives that kind of money to someone straight out of college for some student matching website. His response crystallized something that had been building inside me for years. Marcus wasn't just skeptical about my abilities, he was psychologically incapable of accepting evidence that contradicted his worldview. Even when presented with objective proof of my success, he preferred to deny reality rather than acknowledge that his predictions had been wrong. The funding is real, Marcus. So is the business. So are the results we've achieved. I kept my voice steady, but inside I was experiencing a moment of absolute clarity about our relationship and my family dynamics. For years, I had been seeking their approval and validation, hoping that my achievements would eventually convince them to see me differently. But Marcus's reaction to my success revealed the fundamental flaw in that strategy. He didn't want me to succeed because my success undermined his identity as the successful sibling. My achievements weren't inspiring him to reconsider his assumptions. They were threatening his entire sense of self. Look, Sarah, Marcus said, his tone becoming more aggressive. I don't know what kind of numbers you're throwing around, but real business success takes years to build. You might have some investor interested in your college project, but that doesn't mean you're ready for serious business challenges. You're going to need experienced guidance when things get complicated. Something inside me snapped. Years of accumulated frustration, resentment, and suppressed anger came pouring out in a moment of perfect clarity. Marcus, you just told me you're unemployed because your entire industry is collapsing, and you didn't see it coming. Your management experience consists of working for a company that failed to adapt to obvious market changes. What exactly qualifies you to give me advice about business success? His face flushed red with anger and embarrassment. At least I've been in the real world instead of hiding in academia and playing with theoretical concepts. At least I understand what it means to have real responsibility for real results. Real results? I stood up, no longer able to contain my emotions. Marcus, I've built a profitable company from nothing. I've raised millions in investment capital. I've created jobs for 12 employees and provided valuable services to thousands of students and hundreds of businesses. What real results have you produced besides getting laid off from a retail job? The coffee shop around us had gone quiet, other customers turning to watch our increasingly heated exchange. Marcus stood up as well, towering over me with the same physical intimidation tactics he had used throughout our childhood. You think you're so smart now, don't you? He hissed. You think because you got lucky with some investors, you're suddenly better than everyone else. But I know you, Sarah. You're still the same insecure little girl who needed everyone's approval. And when your luck runs out, when reality hits, you'll come crawling back asking for help from people who actually know what they're doing. In that moment, Marcus revealed more about himself than he intended. His anger wasn't really about my refusal to partner with him. It was about my existence as proof that his entire worldview was wrong. If I could succeed without his guidance, If I could achieve more than he had despite his head start and advantages, then everything he believed about natural talent and predetermined roles was false. "You know what, Marcus?" I said quietly, my anger transforming into something colder and more determined. "You're right about one thing. This conversation has been very educational. I've learned exactly what you think of me and my capabilities. And I've learned that some people are so invested in being right that they can't recognize when they're completely wrong." I gathered my purse and laptop bag, preparing to leave this conversation and everything it represented behind. "Good luck with your job search. I hope you find something that makes you happy." "This isn't over, Sarah," Marcus called out as I walked toward the door. "When your little tech bubble bursts, don't expect any sympathy from the family you've been too good for." Driving home, I felt something fundamental shift inside me. The girl who had spent years seeking her family's approval was finally dead. In her place was a woman who understood that some people would never be capable of seeing her clearly, no matter what she achieved. Marcus had revealed himself to be not just unsupportive, but actively hostile to my success. That night, I called Rebecca Martinez and told her about the conversation with Marcus. Her response was immediate and emphatic. "Sarah, what you just described isn't a brother asking for help. That's someone trying to reassert dominance over you by making you doubt your own capabilities. The fact that he can't acknowledge your success tells you everything you need to know about his character." Rebecca was right. Marcus hadn't come to me seeking partnership or even advice. He had come expecting me to rescue him, while still maintaining his position as the superior sibling. When I refused to play that role, he had revealed his true feelings about my achievements and potential. "The question now," Rebecca continued, "is what you're going to do with this clarity. You can't change Marcus or your family dynamics, but you can choose how much energy you invest in relationships that drain rather than support you." Her words crystallized a decision that had been forming in my mind throughout the confrontation with Marcus. I would stop trying to prove myself to people who were determined not to see my worth. Instead, I would channel that energy into building something so successful, so undeniable, that their opinions would become irrelevant. Over the following weeks, I threw myself into Connected Solutions with renewed intensity. The Series A funding allowed us to hire additional developers, expand our marketing efforts, and accelerate our growth timeline. I was working 14-hour days, but every challenge felt energizing rather than exhausting, because I was building toward a vision that was entirely my own. The contrast with Marcus's situation became more stark as summer progressed into fall. While I was scaling my business and preparing for national expansion, he was struggling to find employment in a job market that had little use for his particular combination of skills and experience. His unemployment benefits were running out, forcing him to move back into our parents' house and accept part-time work at a big-box retailer for a fraction of his previous salary. I learned about his circumstances through my mother, who called periodically to update me on family news and express concern about Marcus's situation. "He's having such a hard time finding something suitable," she said during one of these conversations. "Maybe you could talk to some of your business contacts, see if anyone needs an experienced manager." The request revealed how completely my family still misunderstood both my business and Marcus's value in the current market. They saw my success as a useful connection for helping Marcus, rather than recognizing it as evidence of my capabilities. They still couldn't imagine me as someone who might be in a position to directly employ Marcus, rather than simply networking on his behalf. "I'll keep my ears open," I said diplomatically, knowing that my business contacts would have no interest in hiring someone with Marcus's background and attitude. That winter, Connected Solutions achieved a milestone that would have been unimaginable during my college years. We signed partnership agreements with 50 universities across 12 states, positioning ourselves as the leading platform for connecting student talent with local business needs. Our revenue hit $8 million annually, and we were projecting $20 million for the following year. The success attracted attention from major media outlets and industry publications. I was featured on the cover of Phoenix Business Magazine as Entrepreneur of the Year and invited to speak at national conferences about the future of education business partnerships. Each new achievement widened the gap between my reality and my family's expectations. The irony wasn't lost on me that while Marcus had predicted I would struggle to find employment with my business degree, I was now creating employment opportunities for dozens of people. While he had claimed that real entrepreneurs learned by doing rather than studying, I was proving that academic knowledge combined with practical application could produce extraordinary results. But the most significant moment of clarity came in March, almost a year after my coffee shop confrontation with Marcus. I received a call from a commercial real estate agent about a property I had been considering for Connected Solutions' new headquarters. The space was perfect for our needs, a modern office building in downtown Phoenix with room for expansion and all the amenities we required for a growing tech company. "There's one detail I should mention," the agent said as we discussed lease terms. "The building will need a new janitorial service when you move in. The current tenant is downsizing significantly, and their cleaning company won't be needed for a building this size. We'll need to arrange for comprehensive maintenance services." As he spoke, an idea began forming in my mind, an idea so perfect, so poetic that it took my breath away. I thought about Marcus's dismissive comments about my student matching website. I remembered his confident predictions about my inevitable failure. I recalled his assumption that I would someday need his guidance to handle real business challenges. "Actually," I said to the agent, "I might have a solution for the janitorial services. Let me make some calls and get back to you." That afternoon, I sat in my current office overlooking the ASU campus, where I had first learned to believe in my own potential. Connected Solutions now employed 43 people across multiple states. We had contracts worth tens of millions of dollars. We were expanding internationally and considering acquisition offers from major corporations. And Marcus was living in our parents' basement, working part-time at a retail job, struggling to make ends meet. The natural order he had been so confident about was about to be completely and irrevocably reversed. I picked up my phone and dialed his number, knowing that the conversation I was about to initiate would change our relationship forever. The phone rang 3 times before Marcus answered, his voice carrying the weary tone of someone who had grown accustomed to disappointing conversations. "Hey Sarah, what's up? If this is about that job networking thing Mom mentioned, I'm not really interested in charity referrals." His defensive attitude confirmed what I already suspected about his current mindset. Pride was preventing him from accepting help, even as his financial situation became increasingly desperate. Perfect. What I was about to offer would test exactly how much that pride was worth when confronted with practical necessity. "Actually, Marcus, I'm calling because I have a job opportunity that might interest you. It's not a referral or a favor. It's a legitimate position with competitive pay and benefits." I kept my voice professionally neutral, as if I were speaking to any potential employee, rather than the brother who had spent years undermining my confidence. The silence on the other end stretched long enough that I wondered if the call had dropped. When Marcus finally responded, his tone had shifted from defensive to cautiously interested. "What kind of position? And with what company?" "Facilities management and maintenance coordinator for a corporate headquarters. The position includes building security oversight, equipment maintenance, cleaning services coordination, and general facility operations. The starting salary is $45,000 annually, with full health benefits, paid vacation, and performance-based bonuses." I had crafted the job description carefully, using official-sounding titles that masked the fundamental reality of the work involved. Facilities management coordinator sounded significantly more impressive than janitor, though the actual responsibilities would be identical. The salary I quoted was accurate, representing what I was prepared to pay for comprehensive building maintenance services. "That actually sounds pretty good," Marcus said, his voice brightening for the first time in months. "What company is this with? And how did you hear about the opening?" This was the moment I had been anticipating. The delicious revelation that would reshape our entire relationship dynamic. "The position is with Connected Solutions. My company. I'm the one offering you the job." Another long silence followed, filled with the weight of everything that had passed between us. I could practically hear Marcus processing the implications of what I had just said. His little sister, the one he had dismissed as naive and impractical, was now in a position to offer him employment. The natural order he had been so confident about was revealing itself to be completely inverted. "You're offering me a job at your company?" he asked slowly, as if testing whether he had misunderstood something fundamental. "That's correct. We're expanding into a larger headquarters building, and we need someone to oversee all facility operations." Based on your retail management experience, you have the organizational skills and attention to detail that the position requires. I was being generous in my description of how his background qualified him for the role, but I wanted to preserve some dignity in the offer. Despite our complicated history, I took no pleasure in humiliating him unnecessarily. The simple fact of our reversed positions was humbling enough without adding deliberate cruelty. Marcus was quiet for nearly a minute, and I could imagine him struggling with the emotional complexity of the situation. Accepting the job would mean acknowledging that I had achieved the kind of business success he had predicted was impossible. It would mean working for the sister he had dismissed as unrealistic and impractical. It would mean admitting that his confident predictions about our respective futures had been spectacularly wrong. But refusing the job would mean continuing his current financial struggles with no clear path forward. The retail positions available to him paid significantly less than what I was offering, with fewer benefits and less job security. His pride was expensive, and his bank account was running low. "What exactly would my responsibilities include?" he asked, his tone suggesting he was seriously considering the offer despite the emotional complexity involved. I outlined the position honestly, explaining that he would be responsible for maintaining the cleanliness and functionality of our 15,000-square-foot headquarters. He would coordinate with external vendors for specialized services, manage building security systems, and ensure that all common areas met professional standards. The work was respectable and necessary, though it was undeniably a far cry from the executive aspirations he had once harbored. "And this is a real full-time position with benefits?" Marcus asked. "Not some kind of pity employment or family favor?" "Marcus, I don't do pity employment. This is a legitimate business need for connected solutions. We require professional facility management to maintain our headquarters properly. If you're not interested or don't think you're qualified, I can interview external candidates instead." My matter-of-fact tone seemed to reassure him that this was a genuine business proposition rather than an elaborate form of charity. In truth, it was both. I genuinely needed facility management services, but I could have hired any number of qualified candidates. The opportunity to employ Marcus specifically was too symbolically perfect to pass up. "I'd like to think about it over the weekend," Marcus said finally. "This is a pretty big decision, and I want to make sure I'm approaching it with the right mindset. Of course, the position needs to be filled within 2 weeks, so let me know by Tuesday if you're interested in moving forward with an interview." After we hung up, I sat back in my chair and allowed myself a moment of pure satisfaction. The conversation had unfolded exactly as I had hoped. Marcus was genuinely considering working for me, which meant he was finally confronting the reality of our reversed circumstances. The brother who had once lectured me about knowing my place was now calculating whether his pride was worth more than a steady paycheck. Over the weekend, I received 3 phone calls from family members who had apparently heard about my job offer. The first was from my mother, who expressed concern about the wisdom of mixing family relationships with business arrangements. "Mija, are you sure this is a good idea? Working together might create tension between you and Marcus." The irony of her concern was remarkable. She was worried about tension between Marcus and me, as if our relationship had been harmonious before this offer complicated things. She seemed oblivious to the years of dismissiveness and undermining that had characterized our interactions, focusing instead on the potential awkwardness of our new professional dynamic. "Mom, this is a straightforward business arrangement. Marcus needs employment, and I need facility management services. If he's professional and does good work, it should be beneficial for both of us." My father called on Sunday with a different perspective. "Sarah, I'm proud of you for being willing to help your brother during his difficult time. Families should support each other, and you're showing real maturity by offering him this opportunity." His interpretation of my motivations was both touching and completely wrong. He saw my job offer as an act of sisterly generosity rather than recognizing it as evidence of my business success. Even when presented with clear proof that I was now the family member with resources and opportunities to share, he framed it as me being helpful, rather than me being successful. The third call came from my Aunt Carmen, who had always been more perceptive about family dynamics than my parents. "Sarah, I heard about your job offer to Marcus. I think it's interesting timing, given how dismissive he's been about your business over the years." Her comment suggested she understood the deeper significance of the situation better than my parents did. Aunt Carmen had witnessed Marcus's condescending attitude toward my ambitions during family gatherings, and she seemed to recognize that my current position represented a form of poetic justice. "It's just a business decision, Tia Carmen. Marcus has management experience, and I need someone reliable to oversee facility operations." "Of course it is, Mija," she replied with a knowing tone that suggested she saw through my diplomatic explanation. "I'm sure it's purely coincidental that the sister he said would never amount to anything is now in a position to offer him employment." Tuesday morning arrived with a phone call from Marcus at exactly 9 a.m., suggesting he had been awake early preparing for the conversation. His tone was more formal than usual, as if he were speaking to a potential employer rather than his sister. "Sarah, I'd like to accept your job offer, assuming we can work out the details during an interview process. I appreciate you thinking of me for the position, and I'm committed to proving that your confidence in my abilities is justified." The carefully constructed professionalism of his response revealed how much effort he was putting into managing the emotional complexity of the situation. He was trying to frame his acceptance as a mutual business arrangement, rather than acknowledging the fundamental power shift it represented. "Excellent. Can you come in for an interview on Thursday at 2 p.m.? I'll give you a tour of the facility, and we can discuss expectations and responsibilities in detail." "I'll be there. Should I bring references or a resume?" The question highlighted another layer of irony in our situation. Marcus was asking whether he needed to provide professional references to his little sister, the choir, same person he had once advised to pursue more realistic career goals. The formal job interview process would force him to present his qualifications to someone he had spent years dismissing as professionally naive. A resume would be helpful, just for our HR files, nothing elaborate necessary. Thursday's interview was surreal in ways I hadn't fully anticipated. Marcus arrived at Connected Solutions headquarters, wearing his best suit, carrying a leather portfolio, and projecting the kind of nervous energy typical of someone hoping to make a good impression on a potential employer. Seeing him in this context, seeking my approval rather than offering his criticism, was deeply satisfying in ways I hadn't expected. I conducted the interview in my corner office, which overlooked downtown Phoenix and featured the kind of panoramic city views that typically belonged to senior executives. The office itself told a story about my success that no amount of explanation could have conveyed. This was clearly the workspace of someone who had achieved significant professional accomplishments. Marcus's eyes wandered around the office as we talked, taking in the awards on my walls, the expensive furniture, the multiple monitors displaying real-time business analytics. I could see him processing the visual evidence of my success, comparing it to his assumptions about what my career would look like. "This is quite an operation you've built here," he said as I walked him through our main workspace, where dozens of employees were developing software, managing client relationships, and coordinating business expansion. I had no idea Connected Solutions had grown this large. His comment revealed the depth of his ignorance about my actual achievements. Despite my attempts to share information about my business growth during family conversations, he had clearly dismissed my updates as exaggeration or wishful thinking. Seeing the reality of my company's success was forcing him to confront the accuracy of his assumptions about my capabilities. The tour continued through our conference rooms, break areas, and the executive floor where my senior staff worked. Each space reinforced the same message. This was a serious business operation managed by someone who clearly knew what she was doing. The cognitive dissonance must have been overwhelming for someone who had spent years convinced that I lacked the practical skills necessary for business success. The facility management position would involve maintaining all of these spaces, I explained as we completed the tour. Ensuring cleanliness, coordinating repairs and maintenance, managing security protocols, and generally keeping the building functioning smoothly for our team. Marcus nodded thoughtfully, though I could see him struggling with the reality that he would be responsible for cleaning the offices, where his little sister ran a multi-million-dollar company. The work wasn't degrading or shameful, but it was undeniably a service role rather than a leadership position. "I understand the scope of the responsibilities," he said carefully. "I'm confident I can meet your expectations and maintain the professional standards your company requires." During the formal interview portion, I asked standard questions about his experience, work ethic, and ability to handle various facility management challenges. Marcus answered professionally and competently, drawing on his retail background to demonstrate relevant skills. Despite our personal history, I had to admit he was genuinely qualified for the position. Do you have any questions about the company, the role, or our expectations? I asked as the interview concluded. Marcus hesitated for a moment before responding. I guess I'm wondering about the reporting structure. Who would I be reporting to directly? The question he was really asking was whether he would be reporting to me personally, or to some intermediate manager who might buffer the emotional complexity of our family relationship. I had anticipated this concern and prepared my response accordingly. You'll report to Jennifer Walsh, our operations manager. She oversees all non-technical business functions, including facilities, HR, and administrative services. I'm involved in strategic decisions but not day-to-day operational management. Relief was visible on his face as he processed this information. Working for me indirectly was emotionally manageable in a way that direct reporting might not have been. Jennifer was a competent professional who would evaluate his performance based on objective criteria rather than our complicated family history. That sounds like a good structure, Marcus said. When would you need me to start? Next Monday, assuming you accept our offer. Jennifer will handle onboarding and training during your first week. As we shook hands at the end of the interview, I could see Marcus struggling with conflicting emotions. Professional gratitude for a good job opportunity was competing with personal embarrassment about needing employment from someone he had dismissed for years. Pride was battling with practical necessity, and necessity was winning. Thank you for this opportunity, Sarah. I won't let you down. His promise carried weight beyond the usual job interview platitudes. Marcus understood that his performance in this role would be scrutinized not just as an employee, but as validation of my judgment in hiring him despite our history. He knew that proving himself professionally would require acknowledging my business competence, even if he never admitted it explicitly. The following Monday, I watched from my office window as Marcus arrived for his first day of work at Connected Solutions. He was dressed in the company-provided uniform and carrying a set of building keys that represented his new responsibility for maintaining the headquarters I had built. The symbolism was perfect. The brother who had once predicted my failure was now literally responsible for keeping my success clean and functional. Jennifer later reported that Marcus was taking the job seriously, arriving early and staying late to ensure everything met company standards. He was professional with other employees and seemed genuinely committed to proving his worth in the role. Whatever emotional adjustments he was making privately, he was handling the professional aspects of his new position competently. The family reactions to Marcus's employment at Connected Solutions revealed the different ways people processed our reverse circumstances. My parents expressed relief that he had found stable employment, though they seemed to struggle with understanding how their dynamics had shifted. They were happy for Marcus but uncertain about how to acknowledge my role in providing the opportunity. My mother called after his first week to thank me for helping Marcus during his difficult period. It means so much to know that family supports each other, she said, still framing the situation as me being helpful rather than me being successful enough to provide help. My father was more direct in his assessment. You've built something impressive, Mija. I didn't understand what you were working toward during college, but seeing Marcus working in your building makes it clear that you've achieved real success. His acknowledgement felt both validating and inadequate. Years of dismissing my ambitions couldn't be erased by a single moment of recognition. But it was progress toward a more honest understanding of what I had accomplished. The most interesting reaction came from Aunt Carmen, who called with barely contained amusement about the family role reversal. So the brother who said you'd never amount to anything is now cleaning your offices? Mija, that's what we call poetic justice. Her directness was refreshing after the careful diplomatic language everyone else was using to avoid acknowledging the obvious irony of the situation. She understood that Marcus's employment represented more than just practical assistance. It was a complete vindication of everything he had dismissed about my potential. 3 months into Marcus's employment, Connected Solutions received, making privately he was handling the professional aspects of his new position competently. The family reactions to Marcus's employment at Connected Solutions revealed the different ways people processed our reversed circumstances. My parents expressed relief that he had found stable employment, though they seemed to struggle with understanding how their dynamics had shifted. They were happy for Marcus but uncertain about how to acknowledge my role in providing the opportunity. My mother called after his first week to thank me for helping Marcus during his difficult period. "It means so much to know that family supports each other," she said, still framing the situation as me being helpful rather than me being successful enough to provide help. My father was more direct in his assessment. "You've built something impressive, Mija. I didn't understand what you were working toward during college, but seeing Marcus working in your building makes it clear that you've achieved real success." His acknowledgement felt both validating and inadequate. Years of dismissing my ambitions couldn't be erased by a single moment of recognition. But it was progress toward a more honest understanding of what I had accomplished. The most interesting reaction came from Aunt Carmen, who called with barely contained amusement about the family role reversal. "So the brother who said you'd never amount to anything is now cleaning your offices." Mija, that's what we call poetic justice. Her directness was refreshing after the careful diplomatic language everyone else was using to avoid acknowledging the obvious irony of the situation. She understood that Marcus's employment represented more than just practical assistance. It was a complete vindication of everything he had dismissed about my potential. 3 months into Marcus's employment, Connected Solutions received an acquisition offer from a major educational technology corporation. The offer valued my company at $85 million, representing a return on investment that would make me financially independent for life. Even if I never worked another day, the sale proceeds would support a lifestyle of comfortable luxury. The acquisition negotiations required extensive due diligence, during which corporate lawyers and accountants examined every aspect of Connected Solutions operations. They interviewed key employees, reviewed financial records, and assessed the sustainability of our business model. Their conclusion was unambiguous. I had built a valuable company with strong fundamentals and excellent growth prospects. When the acquisition was finalized 6 months later, I retained a significant equity stake in the combined company, while also receiving a substantial cash payout. The financial terms of the deal were reported in Phoenix Business Journal, making my success a matter of public record that even the most skeptical family members couldn't dispute. Marcus learned about the acquisition the same way as other employees, through a company-wide announcement that explained the strategic benefits of joining forces with a larger organization. He congratulated me professionally when our paths crossed in the office, but I could see him processing the implications of what the sale meant for my financial situation. The girl he had dismissed as impractical and naive had just sold her company for enough money to buy and sell his entire neighborhood several times over. The natural order he had been so confident about wasn't just reversed, it was obliterated beyond any possibility of restoration. Standing in my office after the acquisition announcement, looking down at the building where Marcus now worked maintaining the spaces where I had built my success, I felt a sense of completion that went beyond financial achievement. I had proven every skeptic wrong, exceeded every expectation, and transformed every limitation they had tried to impose on me into motivation for greater success. The brother who had once predicted I would come crawling back for help was now literally working for me, maintaining the building where I had achieved everything he said was impossible. The reversal was so complete, so perfect, that it felt like the universe itself had conspired to prove him wrong in the most dramatic way possible. 2 years after the acquisition, I found myself standing in the penthouse of the luxury high-rise I had purchased in Scottsdale, looking out over the Phoenix skyline where my journey had begun. The view from my floor-to-ceiling windows encompassed the entire city, including the East Phoenix neighborhood, where I had grown up believing that dreams were luxuries my family couldn't afford. The transformation wasn't just financial, it was psychological, emotional, and deeply personal. The acquisition money had opened doors I never could have imagined during my college years. I had invested wisely, diversifying into real estate, technology startups, and sustainable energy projects. My portfolio had grown to 9 figures, placing me among the wealthiest individuals in Arizona under 40. Financial magazines featured me on their covers, universities invited me to give commencement speeches, and entrepreneurs sought my guidance for their own ventures. But the most meaningful transformation wasn't visible in bank statements or business valuations. It was the complete reconstruction of my relationship with myself and my family. The girl who had once desperately sought approval from people who couldn't see her worth had become a woman who knew her value independent of anyone else's recognition. Marcus's evolution during this period was equally dramatic, though far more humbling. Working at Connected Solutions had forced him to confront the gap between his self-perception and reality. The job itself was honest work that he performed competently, but the daily reminder of his sister's success gradually wore down his elaborate defense mechanisms. The first crack in his armor came about 6 months into his employment, during a company holiday party I hosted for all employees and their families. Marcus attended with his girlfriend Lisa, who seemed genuinely impressed by the scale and sophistication of the event. As she mingled with software engineers, business development managers, and other professionals, I overheard her asking Marcus about his role in building the company. "Actually, I just started working here recently," Marcus replied quietly. "Sarah founded and built all of this herself." The admission was small but significant. For the first time in our lives, Marcus had publicly acknowledged my achievements without qualification or diminishment. He wasn't taking credit for my success or minimizing its significance. He was simply stating the truth about what I had accomplished. Lisa's response revealed how isolated Marcus had been in his dismissive attitude toward my capabilities. "Oh wow, Marcus never told me his sister was such a successful entrepreneur. This is incredible what she's built here. You must be so proud of her." Watching Marcus struggle to respond to his girlfriend's natural assumption that he would be proud of my achievements was both painful and illuminating. His silence spoke volumes about the emotional work he still needed to do to process our reverse circumstances. The conversation I had been waiting for finally happened on a quiet Tuesday evening when Marcus asked to speak with me privately after most employees had left the building. He seemed nervous in a way I hadn't seen since our childhood, fidgeting with his key ring as he searched for the right words. "Sarah, I owe you an apology that's about 15 years overdue," he began, his voice carrying a weight of genuine remorse I had never heard from him before. "I've been thinking a lot about the things I said to you over the years, about your dreams and your potential. I was wrong about everything." The admission wasn't surprising, given the overwhelming evidence of my success, but hearing him say it directly still felt significant. Marcus wasn't just acknowledging that his predictions had been incorrect. He was taking responsibility for the damage his words had caused. "I think I was threatened by your ambition because it made me question my own choices," he continued. "It was easier to convince you that your dreams were unrealistic than to face the possibility that I was settling for mediocrity. I was projecting my own limitations onto you." His insight into his own motivations was more sophisticated than I had expected. Marcus was recognizing that his undermining behavior had been driven by his own insecurities, rather than genuine concern for my well-being. The clarity of his self-reflection suggested he had been doing serious work to understand his role in our dysfunctional family dynamics. "I'm grateful that you ignored my advice and followed your instincts instead," Marcus said. "And I'm grateful that despite how I treated you, you were still willing to offer me employment when I needed it most. That showed a generosity of spirit that I certainly hadn't earned." His gratitude was genuine, but I could see that it came with a heavy burden of regret. Marcus was confronting not just the fact that he had been wrong about my potential, but that his wrongness had cost him years of having a positive relationship with someone who was now in a position to significantly impact his life. "Marcus, I appreciate your apology," I replied carefully, "but I need you to understand that this isn't just about you being wrong in your predictions. You actively tried to undermine my confidence and convince me to abandon my dreams. That caused real damage that took years to overcome." He nodded solemnly, accepting the full weight of my accusation without defensiveness or justification. "You're absolutely right. I didn't just doubt your abilities, I tried to make you doubt them too. That was cruel and destructive, and I'm deeply sorry for the harm I caused." The conversation marked a turning point in our relationship, though it didn't immediately resolve all the accumulated hurt and resentment. Trust that had been broken over many years couldn't be rebuilt through a single conversation, no matter how sincere. But Marcus's willingness to acknowledge his mistakes without making excuses created a foundation for potentially healthier interactions in the future. My parents' transformation was more gradual but equally profound. The undeniable evidence of my success forced them to reconsider their assumptions about risk, education, and the value of pursuing ambitious goals. They began asking questions about my business strategies and investment decisions, seeking my advice on their own financial planning. During one family dinner, my father made a comment that revealed how completely his perspective had shifted. "Misha, I need to admit that I was wrong to discourage your college plans. I thought I was protecting you from disappointment, but I was actually limiting your potential. If I had understood then what you were capable of achieving, I would have supported your dreams from the beginning." His admission meant more to me than he probably realized. For years, I had carried the weight of his skepticism, wondering if his doubts reflected some truth about my limitations that I was too naive to recognize. Hearing him acknowledge that his opposition had been based on his own fears rather than my actual capabilities was deeply healing. My mother's evolution was more emotional and complex. She struggled with guilt about her role in enabling Marcus's undermining behavior and her failure to protect my confidence during crucial developmental years. "I should have seen what was happening," she said during one of our private conversations. "I should have stood up for you when Marcus was tearing down your self-esteem." Her regret was genuine, but I had learned through therapy that accepting responsibility for other people's past choices wasn't healthy or productive. "Mom, you did the best you could with the understanding you had at the time. What matters now is that we all know better and can do better going forward." The broader family transformation extended beyond immediate relatives to the network of aunts, uncles, and cousins who had witnessed our childhood dynamics. Family gatherings became dramatically different experiences, as relatives who had once dismissed my ambitions now sought my advice about their own business ventures and investment opportunities. My success had created a new family narrative, where education, risk-taking, and ambitious goal-setting were valued rather than discouraged. Younger cousins began approaching me for guidance about college choices and career planning, seeing me as proof that extraordinary achievements were possible even from modest backgrounds. The ripple effects extended into the broader community as well. Helen Chen, my mentor from Grind Coffee House, had followed my career with pride and satisfaction. "I always knew you had special potential," she told me during a recent visit to her shop. "But even I didn't imagine you would achieve success on this scale so quickly." Helen's coffee shop had benefited indirectly from my success, as I had become a loyal customer who brought business contacts for meetings and recommended the location to other entrepreneurs. Our relationship had evolved from mentor-mentee to mutual respect between successful business owners. Professor Amanda Wilson and Dr. James Patterson from ASU had incorporated my story into their entrepreneurship curriculum, using connected solutions as a case study for students learning about startup development and scaling strategies. Being featured as an example of successful entrepreneurship in the program, where I had learned foundational business skills, felt like completing a meaningful circle. The personal growth that accompanied my professional success was equally transformative. Therapy had helped me understand how childhood experiences had shaped my relationship patterns and decision-making processes. I learned to recognize when I was seeking external validation versus making choices based on my own values and goals. Dating and relationships became easier as I developed confidence in my own worth that didn't depend on other people's approval. I met David Rodriguez, an environmental engineer who shared my passion for sustainable technology, through a professional conference where we were both speaking about innovation in our respective fields. Our relationship developed naturally, based on mutual respect and shared values, rather than any need to prove my worthiness to someone who might doubt it. David's response to learning about my family history was illuminating in its simplicity. "It sounds like they couldn't see your potential because they were trapped in their own limited thinking," he said after I shared the story of my journey. "But that says more about their limitations than yours. You were always capable of this success. You just needed the right environment to develop it." His perspective helped me understand that my family's initial skepticism hadn't been a reflection of some hidden truth about my limitations. It had been a reflection of their own experiences and expectations, which were shaped by factors that had nothing to do with my actual potential. The philanthropic opportunities that came with financial success allowed me to address some of the systemic issues that had made my own journey more difficult than necessary. I established the Martinez Foundation, which provided scholarships and mentorship for first-generation college students from working-class families pursuing business and technology degrees. The Foundation's programs were designed to address the specific challenges I had faced: family pressure to choose practical careers, lack of professional networks, limited understanding of how to navigate higher education and business environments. We provided not just financial support, but comprehensive guidance to help students develop the confidence and skills needed for entrepreneurial success. Working with scholarship recipients reminded me daily of how transformative the right support could be for young people with ambitious dreams but limited resources. Many of the students reminded me of my younger self, brilliant, determined, but surrounded by people who couldn't envision their potential. One scholarship recipient, Maria Santos, particularly resonated with my own experience. Her family had immigrated from Guatemala and worked multiple jobs to support her education, but they couldn't understand her interest in studying computer science rather than pursuing more traditionally stable careers like nursing or teaching. "My parents think I'm being unrealistic," Maria confided during one of our mentorship meetings. "They keep telling me to choose something safer, something guaranteed, but I want to build something that matters, like you did." Her words transported me back to my own struggles with family expectations and limited vision. The difference was that Maria had access to resources and encouragement that I had to find on my own. The foundation was providing her with the support system I wished I had during my own journey. "Maria," I told her, "the people who love us often try to protect us from disappointment by encouraging us to limit our dreams. But the biggest risk isn't failure. It's never trying at all. You have the intelligence and determination to succeed at whatever you choose to pursue." Watching Maria and other scholarship recipients develop confidence in their abilities and achieve their goals provided a sense of purpose that went beyond personal financial success. I was helping to break cycles of limited expectations that had constrained previous generations. The ultimate vindication of my journey came not through any specific achievement or recognition, but through the cumulative weight of everything I had built. Standing in my penthouse office, reviewing the portfolio of businesses I had created or invested in, I realized that I had exceeded every goal I had set for myself during those difficult college years. Connected Solutions had been acquired and expanded internationally, serving universities across 3 continents. My investment portfolio included stakes in 17 different companies, ranging from educational technology to sustainable energy to artificial intelligence. The Martinez Foundation had provided support to over 200 students, many of whom were now launching their own successful careers. But the achievement that meant the most to me was the transformation of my family relationships from sources of doubt and limitation into sources of genuine support and pride. Marcus had become not just an employee, but someone who actively celebrated my success and encouraged my continued growth. My parents had evolved from skeptical critics into enthusiastic advocates who frequently shared stories of my achievements with anyone willing to listen. The journey from dismissed dreamer to successful entrepreneur had taught me that other people's limitations don't define your potential. The voices that tell you to be realistic, to settle for less, to know your place, are often speaking from their own fears rather than your actual capabilities. I learned that the most powerful response to skepticism isn't argument or explanation, it's simply proving them wrong through consistent action and undeniable results. Every success builds momentum for greater success. Every achievement expands the range of what seems possible. Most importantly, I discovered that seeking validation from people who benefit from your self-doubt is a waste of energy that could be better invested in building the life you actually want. The approval that matters most is your own, based on your own values and goals rather than other people's limited vision. Standing at my window overlooking the city where my transformation began, I felt grateful for every challenge that had shaped my journey. Marcus's dismissiveness had motivated me to prove him wrong. My family's limited expectations had taught me to trust my own judgment. Every obstacle had contained the seeds of greater strength and determination. The girl who had once doubted whether she belonged in business school had become a woman who knew she belonged wherever she decided to go. The sister who had been told she'd never amount to anything had created opportunities for hundreds of other people to achieve their own dreams. And Marcus, the brother who had once predicted my failure, now worked in the building where I had proved him spectacularly wrong. The natural order he had been so confident about had been completely reversed, replaced by a new reality where determination and intelligence mattered more than predetermined roles or family expectations. The story of our transformation wasn't just about success or revenge or role reversal. It was about the power of refusing to accept other people's limitations as your own reality. It was about the importance of persisting through doubt and criticism to build something meaningful. It was about the possibility of completely rewriting the narratives that others try to impose on your life. Every time I see Marcus maintaining the building where I built my success, I'm reminded that the most satisfying victories aren't the ones where you defeat your enemies, but the ones where you prove that their weapons were never strong enough to stop you. Their doubt became my motivation. Their limitations became my launching pad. Their prediction of my failure became the foundation for my success. That's the real lesson of this journey. You don't have to convince anyone that your dreams are worthwhile. You just have to make them come true. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.